just shoot a hole into the surface of Mars.
So following the release of Doom Eternal, I did what I normally do when I play a new game. I posted a Things That Annoy Me video. It's a review series that I do where I deliberately focus on the negative aspects of a game because I believe in the importance of negative reviews. You can get praise for a game anywhere, but you won't get honest criticism everywhere, and I try to balance that out as best I can. I believe knowing the negatives of something is really important when making a buying decision. Surprisingly, this video ended up becoming one of my most controversial, which is slightly hilarious to me. Really, out of all the stuff that I've said on this channel and all the fights I've gotten into, this is the video that gets the dislike brigade. This video. I mean, thanks for the views, but still. Looking back on my review, I do still agree with most of what I said, but after having played the game more and I'm currently going through the campaign again, I think it's worth elaborating on some of the stuff I said. So these are things that annoy me about Doom Eternal. That took like 4 takes to say, by the way. For some reason, that's really hard to say. There were really only 4 things I talked about in my review because I really like this game, and I could only really come up with 4 big criticisms. Those being the Marauders, the swimming, the multiplayer, and the overall content. So we'll talk about those things in order. So right away, let me say yes, I was being a bitch in my review. I wasn't good at the game yet, and I was being a bitch. Is that what you wanted to hear? I'm a little bitch who was mad at the Marauders. I'm a bitch. But now having played the game again, I still have issues with them. Even though they can be killed easily once you get the fundamentals of the game down, I still think they needed to be reworked because they're fundamentally different from the rest of the demon selection, and that can really kill the flow of fights. In the review, I said my problems with the Marauders were that they were inconsistent and they can't be multitasked the way the rest of the cast can be. I don't think they're as inconsistent as I initially thought having played the game again. I think I just wasn't used to changing my game plan as much as they require you to do. I was being a bitch, but I still have issues with them. I actually think there's a lot of similarities between the Marauders and Doom Eternal and Mei in Overwatch. And if you've watched my Overwatch streams at all, you know how I feel about Mei. Mei is notorious for completely bringing fights to a standstill. She requires you to drop your current game plan and focus on her because she's capable of completely shifting the game pace with minimal effort, which is what makes her really frustrating to fight against. The Marauders are the same way, but with differences in the nitty-gritties. Because they're much more aggressive than other demons in the game, you have to either kill them immediately or save them for last. No other demon in Doom Eternal affects the game pace as much as the Marauders do, and I'm seeing now that whether or not you think that's a bad thing is more subjective than objective, which is a differentiation that I didn't make in my review, and that was a mistake. Games like Doom are great because they flow so well and they let you decide on the fly how you want to do things and what order you want to take out enemies, but when a Marauder is on the field, it feels like there's now only one right way to do things. And while I don't think there's anything fundamentally or objectively wrong with that, I'm still not a fan. The flow of Doom is so perfectly designed, and to have one enemy completely change it can be really frustrating. As for the other things I said about the Marauders, I mostly don't agree. I said some stuff about how he was inconsistent and doesn't follow his own rules, but maybe I was just getting bad luck because on my most recent playthrough I didn't have as much of an issue with that. I still had some issue, and I still think he's inconsistent as a character, but definitely not to the extent that I said in that video. So one more time, yes, I was being a bitch about the Marauders. No, I still don't like them. My opinion hasn't changed. Adding swimming was a dumb idea. If the Marauders are the death of pacing, swimming is the evil mastermind that comes back to life in episode 9 of pacing. I probably shouldn't be as annoyed by the swimming as I am, but I literally cannot think of a single person who likes water sections in games, let alone timed water sections. In the words of Nakey Jakey,
the majority of the time, fictional Italians, much like real people, like to be on land. Because if it doesn't feel good, and it's not fun to control and play with your hands, because last time I checked, video games were kind of supposed to be fun. They don't have to, they could be educational or whatever, but it's just gonna end up being this tacked on thing that in reality, it's a level that everyone just wants to skip.
My opinions here haven't changed much either, but it's worth talking a little more about them and elaborating on it. After playing a bit more of battle mode, I appreciated it a little more than I did. There was clearly a lot of love into making all the demons feel unique and fun to play, and it's definitely fun to be a fully beefed up Doom guy and go against actual human brains instead of the computer. However, the appeal of this wears off really quickly, and I think it has something to do with the fact that there's really only so many ways that battle mode can play out. And I guess you could say that about any game, but for some reason, and I can't put my finger on it really, battle mode just feels less interesting than the normal campaign, despite it having theoretically way more variety on paper. Part of that probably has to do with the fact that I've never been all that into asymmetrical multiplayer games like this, you know, like Evolve and Friday the 13th and whatnot. And I still think it was the wrong move to replace normal Doom multiplayer with this. I don't see a good reason why normal team multiplayer was completely scrapped in order to make way for a single multiplayer mode that isn't all that deep or complex. It's one thing to scrap established features for a big, innovative new mode, but when you scrap something that's been in the game for almost 3 decades and replace it with this, I feel like I'm allowed to be annoyed about that. And I'm trying really hard not to dig into the aspects of battle mode I don't like, because again, I fully recognize that asymmetrical multiplayer games like this just aren't my thing the way team multiplayer games are. I just don't feel like I'm a good judge of whether or not battle mode did a good job at what it's trying to do, if that makes sense. But what I can say as a casual observer and as a fan of previous Doom multiplayers, the decision to cut as much as they did was frustrating. And that carries into Snap Map, which is just gone with nothing to replace it. At least normal multiplayer was replaced with something. Snap Map is just deleted with no replacement. I don't want to beat a dead horse or anything, so I'll close this section with this. Doom 2016 launched for $60 and included an 11-ish hour campaign, a multiplayer with 6 modes and 9 maps, and an elaborate level editor. Doom Eternal launched for $60 and included a 12-ish hour campaign, a multiplayer with 1 mode and 6 maps, and that's it. So that's my follow-up to my Doom Eternal review. After the reception of the last video and going through the game again, I felt the need to set the record straight. I'm normally someone who just puts my opinions out there and I'm confident in the things that I say, but when my opinions change or when I feel like I didn't say something the way I wanted to say them, I feel obligated to correct the record, just for my own sake. So I'm sorry if this wasn't what you wanted to hear, but it's what I think. I definitely should have been more careful with my first video, but the record is straight now and that's what matters. So feel free to dislike this video too if you want. Engagement is engagement. And if you like, you can follow me on Twitter at JoeFromSeattle1 or donate to the channel with the link in the description. Absolutely not expected, but very much appreciated.